2. 五代续恶与局部回朝，颓势难挽。The turbulent times of the five dynasties continued the suppression of Buddhism. The Buddhist persecution in the second year of the Xian reign under Emperor Shizong of the later Zhou dynasty Zhou Wu AD became the final catastrophe of the four great Buddhist persecutions in Chinese history. Emperor Shizong, in the name of frugality and caring for the people, ordered that 3万零336 unlicensed temples under heaven be abolished, 2694 remain, and Lo Shi, 200 monks and nuns be registered, and forced the confiscation of copper Buddha statues and ritual vessels from the people to cast coins. All copper artifacts and Buddha statues among the people must be handed over to the government within 50 days, and those who violate the order with more than 5 katis will be executed. Although this movement was not as thorough as the Huichang persecution, it further undermined the social foundation of Buddhism, and the scale of the Sangha continued to shrink. It is worth noting that the southern regimes such as Wu Yu, Southern Tang and Min, far from the wars in the Central Plains, formed a local atmosphere of advocating Buddhism. King Qianlu of Wu Yu built countless temples and pagodas, and his son King Qianchu, in order to revive the Tiantai school, sent envoys to Goryeo to retrieve the lost 3 great works of Tiantai, organized great monks to collate and print them, enabling the Tiantai school to continue in the Jiangnan region. Li Yu, the last emperor of Southern Tang, was obsessed with Buddhism, respected pagodas and temples, and ordained countless monks and nuns. Built more than 10 temples such as Qingliang Temple and Kaishan Temple in Jinling, and invited Wenyi, a great master of the Faiyan school of Chan Buddhism, to reside there, promoting the Faiyan school to become the mainstream of Chan Buddhism in the 5 dynasties. However, these local revivals were only limited to the southern region, and most relied on the support of the regime, lacking ideological innovation, making it difficult to reverse the decline of Buddhism in the Central Plains. 3. The Song dynasty. Imperial power suppression and Neo-Confucianism's assimilation of Buddhism, dual decline of ideological and political status. 3. 宋代皇权压制与理学融佛，思想与政治地位双重沉沦。In the early Northern Song dynasty, although Emperors Taizu and Taizong reorganized Buddhism for a time, establishing a translation institute, carving and printing the Kaibao Tripitaka, and ordaining Shitsiwant monks and nuns, this support was essentially imperial power's control over religion. The illusion of Emperor Taizu Zhao Kuangyin and the Sangha Registrar Zaning vividly highlighted Buddhism's political submission. According to Volume 1 of Notes from the Retreat to the Countryside by Ouyang Xu, when Emperor Taizu first visited the Daxiangua temple, He burned incense before the Buddha statue and asked whether he should kowtow. Zaning, the Sangha registrar, replied, "No kowtowing." Asked why, he said, "A living Buddha does not kowtow to a past Buddha." Zaning compared the emperor to a living Buddha, placing mortal imperial power above the past Buddha Sakyamuni, and abolishing the emperor's kowtow ceremony to Buddha statues. Zhao Kuangyin smiled and nodded, and this became a fixed system. Since then, emperors of the Song dynasty all performed the ritual of Shaoxiang Hejian when visiting temples. Even Emperor Taizong and Emperor Zenzong, who favored Buddhism, strictly abided by this system, and Buddhist etiquette was completely subordinated to imperial ritual norms. The Song dynasty also established a rigorous system of Sangha officials and monk ordination. The left and right street Sangha registrar departments were set up to manage monk registers and religious rules, with Sangha officials selected and appointed by the court. The quota for monk ordination was strictly limited. Only one person could be ordained each year for every 100 monks and nuns, and those who failed the ordination exam would bring punishment to the entire temple, integrating Buddhism completely into the management system of the secular regime. The rise of Neo-Confucianism eroded the core value of Buddhism at the ideological level. Cheng Hao and Cheng Yi denounced Buddhism for abandoning family and state and violating ethical norms. Zhu Xi put forward investigating things to extend knowledge by drawing on the Chan school's meditation with observation. His core proposition of preserving the heavenly principle and eliminating human desires was logically consistent with Buddhism's breaking afflictions and cutting off obsessions. Yet he denounced Buddhism as a heresy. As Chen Yingke noted, Song Confucian scholars adopted foreign thoughts to remedy the deficiencies of the inherent tradition, yet feared the transformation of Chinese culture by foreign influences. Thus, they found a middle way, embracing the essence while rejecting the name. After Neo-Confucianism became closely intertwined with the imperial examination, Buddhism's ideological uniqueness was completely erased. Scholar officials regarded themselves as the orthodoxy of Confucianism, and Buddhism, completely withdrew from the elite ideological circle. Emperor Huizong even launched a movement of promoting Taoism and suppressing Buddhism for a time, renaming Buddha as Great Awakened Golden Immortal and monks and nuns as virtuous scholars, with costumes and etiquette imitating Taoism. Although it was abolished only a year later, it further aggravated Buddhism's marginalization. For the surviving Chan and Pure Land Buddhism, their development also faced constraints. The Chan school gradually split into sects such as Linji, Caodong, and Yunmen, but the doctrinal innovation was insufficient, and the later koan practice became increasingly formalized. The Pure Land school relied more on folk belief and Buddhist associations, and its doctrinal research was almost stagnant, becoming a purely practical sect. The Yuan dynasty, emphasizing Tibetan Buddhism and suppressing Han Buddhism. Han Buddhism reduced to a political appendage. 4. 元代崇藏抑汉，汉地佛教沦为政治附庸。The ruling logic of the Yuan dynasty dealt a fatal blow to Han Buddhism. As an external ethnic group, the Mongolian rulers took ruling the majority with the minority as their core goal, designating Tibetan Buddhism as the state religion, honoring Phagspa as the imperial preceptor, and performing kowtow rituals to Tibetan Buddha statues and living Buddhas. To build a Mongolian-Tibetan religious and political alliance, thereby controlling the borderlands through Tibetan Buddhism. For Han Buddhism, however, the Yuan dynasty always strictly adhered to the no kowtowing system and adopted a suppressive policy. The scale of Han temples and the status of the Sangha were far inferior to those of the Song dynasty. The land and property granted by the court to Tibetan Buddhist temples far exceeded that to Han temples, and many Han temples had to rely on Tibetan Buddhism to survive, losing all their independent status. For the already declining Tiantai and Sanlun schools, the Yuan dynasty's suppression accelerated their decline. The Tiantai school's inheritance in the Jiangnan region was interrupted again, and only a few temples maintained the name of the Tiantai school, without systematic doctrinal inheritance. The Sanlun school had completely disappeared, and its doctrines could only be found in ancient classics. The Chan and Pure Land schools, as the mainstream of Han Buddhism, also lost their development momentum. The Chan school sects became increasingly scattered, and the master-disciple inheritance was not as clear as that of the Song dynasty. The Pure Land school's spread was limited to the folk, and it could not obtain official support, and its influence continued to shrink. Meanwhile, Indian Buddhism completely perished in the wave of Islamic invasions in the 11th century. Central Asian Muslim forces burned down Buddhist centers such as Nalanda Temple and massacred the Sangha, and Indian Buddhism, which had been inherited for thousands of years, vanished forever. Although Han Buddhism became the only orthodox Inheritор of Bud, Dhism, it had degenerated into an appendage of Tibetan-Buddhism and lost the ability of ideological dissemination and cultural radiation. The Ming and Qing dynasties, strict control and folklorization, gradual demise of the spiritual core.